You can have mine.
Yeah, because we had
They dilated that.
I can see, but
So you can share with me.
Yeah, I can share with you because I feel bad.
no, don't feel bad. I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna listen to it. I'm chilling.
Hi.
What page are we on? I can chill too.
I think we're on 141,
141. Okay.
the din of chatzitza. We have our we have 3 sleeping with us. It's like we're not 20 years old.
How do you think I am when I get the road?
Okay, we're on page 141.
River bribing.
Marshmallows, chocolate. Pringles.
In Urim, we learned about a number of halachos of Netilas Yadayim. We talked about that the vessel, how big the vessel has to be intact. Can it be disposable or not? We talked about the water. Could it be colored water? Could it be hot water? As well as last week, we learned what if you don't have any water? So in this year, we will focus on the rules of a chatzitza, which is an interposition or separation between the water and your hand, as they relate to performing the Netilas Yadayim. We learned in volume 7, with respect to the laws of Nida, that when a person immerses in a mikveh, the purifying water must be in direct contact with the person immersing, and a chatzitza between the water and the body disqualifies the immersion. According to the Gemara in Masechta Chulin, the same is true regarding the Netilas Yadayim, such that a chatzitza between the hands and water disqualifies the netila. We're on page 141. So in Chulin, Kuv Vav Amud Beis, V'chol davar shechotzeit b'tefila b'guf, if there's something interposing between the tefillah and the body, chotzeit b'netilas yadayim l'chulin. That we have to do netilas yadayim before we eat chulin. The same rules apply when we do tefillah for our whole goof. And b'kiddush yadayim v'raglayim b'mikdash, when the kohanim would go to the kior to wash their hands and feet, the same dinim applied there. That was for kodshim. Based on this, Tosfos there in Chulin rules that one should make sure to clean out any dirt or other substances from underneath one's nails before performing the Sidai. Nevertheless, Tosfos writes that if the chatzitza is one that covers a minority of the surface area under discussion, and one does not mind that the substance is present, it's not considered a chatzitza. Kol davar, that's the dibra maschol. The tzarich lizar b'shas netila mitit. It is like mud, upotsek, dough, shetachas atzipoiren, that's under the fingernail. The choytitzim b'tfila. And that serves as a chatzitza. Kidit nan mesach the nikvos. V'chol davar shechoytzet b'tfila tzarich mochen lizar b'netil lachila. Same din that apply when you go to a mikveh applies to washing your hands when you're going to go eat. It says Tosfos of makpid. If it's a minority of your hand and you don't care about it, ein lachush. The b'tefila nami ein chotzitz. Also, if it's only a minority, it does not have a chatzitz.
This includes only the ring.
We're going to see about rings right now. right now we're talking about dirt,
Hmm.
but a ring is gonna be a chatzitza too, because it separates between the water and the hand. The Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah adopt and illustrate the implications of the ruling of Tosfos. Tzarech lizar mechatzitza. You have to be careful for interpositions. Shekol davar shechoitzes b'tefila choitzes b'netila kagon. Soa shetachas atziporin, dung that's beneath the fingernails. Shelo keneged abasar, even though it's not right on your skin. Ubatzek shetachas atziporin, or let's say somebody was kneading dough and was working with dough, and it gets under your fingernails. Afilu keneged abasar, parallel to the flesh. V'ritiyah shel absar, if you have a cast or a bandage. V'tit hayavon, like clay. V'tit hayotzrim, the clay that the potters use. Aval b'mi'itu she'emakbid, if it's a minority of your hand and you don't care about it, then it would not be considered chatzitz. Says the Ramah. We don't have a practice that you have a toothpick at the sink, like we surgeons. When we wash our hands in the morning before surgery, they have a plastic implement that we're supposed to remove the dirt from under our fingernails before we wash our hands. But we don't have that minig before Netilas Yadayim. People, if you happen to have a fleck of something underneath your fingernail, you're not makpid about that, and it's just a miut, it's a minority. So people in general are not makpid for Netilas Yadayim. Avalim hayam makpid, if you're a very fastidious person, and you care that there's something there, you have to clean it. He says that some people might have been lenient here, because not everybody agrees to this in of chatzitza for netila like it is for tefillah. Says the Rambam. The Mishnah Brura will offer some other additional background. Akadim lezak damak tzara. The Mishnah Brura here in Kuf Samech Aleph, which is the Hilchos Netilas Yadayim, he gives us a little hagdam. V'hu d'le'inyan tfilas haguf. When it comes to immersing your whole body in a mikveh, there you have to be careful that there is no interposition. You can't have anything stuck to your body at the time you go into mikveh. That place will not have water going to it. And the tefillah wouldn't work. Midoraisa, even for immersion of your whole body, it would only be disqualified if you had a chatzitza on more than 51% of your body. But the rabbis instituted a chumrah. So if there's a chatzitza, just let's say a ring on your finger, which is obviously a minority of your body, it's rabbinic law that they were makbid to tell you to remove it. Gzeira aturubo. They made a gzeira that remove everything, because if you don't, you'll come to have a chatzitza on the majority of your body. It's just that it's considered chatzitza if the majority of people would remove it, because they're makpid that it's on them. Even though now going into the mikveh doesn't care. If people would not consider a chatzitza, then then it's only if it's covering the majority of your body. Even if someone is not makpid for that it's on him, If it's the majority of your body, the Chachamim say it would be a chatzitza. Ulein netilas yadayim gam came. Afshu mirabban. The whole netilas yadayim is mirabbanan. Called the tikkun rabbanan came to raisa tikkun. There's a principle. Whenever the rabbis instituted a law, they followed Doraisa practice. Al Kain, Yesh Chatzitza al Rav Ayad. If there's a chatzitza on the majority of his hand, I know al Rav Mokam on Atila, Aser. Afilu Mein Derech B'Leon Lakbid, even if most people would not be makbid. B'may Rak al Miyut Hayad, Eino Aser Elam Ken Derech Lakbid al Zeh. If it's on the minority of your hand, then it's only Aser if people would be makbid. Ve'atan Nevayer Divrei Shulchan Aruch. Mashakosov lizar mechatzitza. Hainu. She'asir me'yadayim kodem netila kol davar shedech le'am lak be'lav lasiro. People should remove from their hands things that are normal that people would remove because they're makbid. B'mnatal yod v'achkach nimsal of davar achotzitz. And if he washed his hands and then later on found that there was a chatzitza, bein al miyut hayad, bein al rov hayad, talinan lahakel. They lean to be lenient. But you should check to make sure that what are some other practical examples. We saw that one practical example of a paspal chatzitza is finding dough or dirt underneath one's fingernails. And this, the source of the Shulchan Aruch is the Rosh. Dung underneath the fingernails. Which isn't really touching flesh. Dough that's even touching the flesh. The Rashba explains what is this parallel to the flesh, right? Refers to the area of the flesh underneath the fingernail, while not parallel to the flesh refers to the area underneath the fingernail that extends out beyond the flesh. So that's from the Rashba. What is considered not keneged habasar? Hayat ziporin gadol. Somebody has a really long nail, and the nail sticks off oidif al habasar, way beyond the finger. That's what's meant zeu shelo keneged habasar. And if a person would be makbid on that, even though it's not necessarily next to your flesh, you'd have to remove it. The Mishnah Berurah writes that people are generally more particular about dough under nails than dirt. He says if the fingernail is long and it extends beyond the finger, and the dung or dirt that's underneath the fingernail that's beyond the finger, most people are going to clean that. It's disgusting. Since people are makbid to clean it, it's considered a chatzitza. Got to get rid of that. In dough, that means the finger was not that long, and there's just a little dough underneath your fingernail, which is parallel to the flesh. People are makbid on that, and you should remove it. There in Yoreh De'ah it mentions other things that are choitzitz, but here it lists the common ones. Why is there a distinction between dirt and dough? Rav Vosner in the Shevet HaLevi explains that other family members would likely be repulsed if the dirt from one's fingernails gets into food one prepares. So filth doesn't refer to dung here. It refers to the dirt that tends to gather under fingernails. Dough just doesn't refer to dough. Any food that gets stuck to your fingernail. Upirsha Beis Yosef, the Beis Yosef commentary on the tour explains, the husband is going to be repulsed. That you're feeding me this dirt. When you're kneading the dough, you're putting this dirt in the dough. They didn't use cleanliness in preparing the food. And today, people don't work that much with their hands with food. Perhaps today, this sort of food that gets stuck, people don't care about. Those people that care a lot about cleanliness, it will be a chatzitza and you should clean it. The Rashba writes that if one has a chatzitza on one hand, that some people are particularly removed and others are not, the halacha is subjective and depends upon whether that individual is particular or not. You have two different people with the same chatzitza. One cares about it, one doesn't. To the one who cares, it's a chatzitza. How does this work? He was a painter or a dyer. And he has dye on his hands. It would not be considered chatzitza for him, even though there's ink stains there. Somebody who's not a dyer, and he has dye on his hands, he's gonna be concerned about that. That's if it's dry. If it's moist, it's not a chatzitza. Women dye their hands for beautification process. It's not considered a chatzitza, says the Rashba. I don't think they're talking here about fingernails. I think they're talking about rouge or something that was put on their hands. So the Shulchan Aruch, he follows the Rashba exactly. That for a person who cares, it's not a chatzitza. Who does not care, it's not a chatzitza. For a person who cares, it's a chatzitza. Okay, it said, one is a dyer, he walks around all day with dyed hands. So even though he has a lot of dye on his hands, it's not a chatzitza. But if that's not his profession, if it's dry, it's a chatzitza. Women who color their hands, ain't also seva chotzitz. It's not considered chatzitza. The ruling of the Rashba and Shulchan indicate that in the case of someone who is used to having dyed hands, such as a dyer, this person may perform the Netilas Yadayim even if the dye covers the majority of the hand. This seems to contradict the Mishnah Berurah's position that when the majority of the washing area is covered, it's considered chatzitza, even if you're not makpid. How do we resolve that contradiction? The answer is that there's a distinction between dye on a laborer's hands, which might be tolerated, but certainly not specifically wanted, and decorative dye on a woman's hands. In the former case, the Mishnah Berurah is lenient only if the hands are only partially covered. But the woman wants the decorative dye on the hands, so it's not considered a chatzitza. He says clearly for the dye, it's got to be a minority of his hand. The ilu ayaruba kaimalan da filo makpid choitzitz. Even if he doesn't care, it's a chatzitza. In contrast, women who dye their hands for beauty specifically desire the presence of the dye. Consequently, even if the hands are entirely colored, the dye has the status of the hand itself and does not interpose. Ayin Mishnah Berurah, Sheritzon Lomer Miktas Memokam Anatila, the minority of the hand, V'chein Kosav Hagraz, V'chein Mashmek Tzatz Lamayim Beves Yosef, Betur, B'Mashe Visham B'Shem Arashbal, in Nashim Shetzoves. So our Roshan, if they dye their hair, Shekosav Sham Afapi Shetzovas Posh B'Chol Asav V'Ruba Shem Makmilav Choitzitz Ayin Sham. There, if you dye your hair, it was considered still a chatzitza. It shouldn't be any worse than craftsmen that get their hands dirty. He loves for us the miskavnus l'chadchila rotzes bekach ein shamayim chotzes. They're dyeing their hair. They're doing it on purpose. They want it there. If it wasn't for that, it would be a chatzitza. Inei b'chay odem kosa. Dili inyan soveya. A dyer, other craft people who work with their hands, even if this dye or ink covers the whole hand, it's not a chtzitza. I don't know where the Chayyim got this. There's no reason to gzeira. He's used to it all. Or like Kevin Regilim Leilach came time, they go like this all the time. Gufayim is considered like his body. The Loshach Chatzitza, Kol Zehu Davar Chadash, V'Matzatim, the Poskim Remez says the Bir Allah, who's the Mishnah Berurah. Ulufi Zayin Medugduk Tzat Loshno Shulchanach B'Masha Kosav V'Chein Anoshim, Ala Inyan Noshim Adifat Afilu Tzavur Kol Hayad, Ein Shai Chatzitza. So the Mishnah Berurah says, even if the entire hand is colored, there's no Chatzitza. The Piskei Tshuva suggests, Im Derech Rov Bnei is that the fundamental principle with respect to chatzitza is as follows: Im Derech Rov Bnei Adam Lakpid L'Salik Chatzitza. If most people would remove whatever's on their hand, Af Shehu V'Od Bnei Adam Ein Makpidim. Even if he and a minority are not makpid, but the majority of people are makpid, but l'daitem it's considered a chatzitza. They have to follow the majority. If the majority of people, you took a poll, they would not be makpid. If he personally was machmir, you would be machmir. The Balatanya's Shulchan Aruch says you could be lenient. The majority of people don't worry about it, then you don't have to worry about it either. And there's a graph here with the principles based on the machlokas we learned. That the Torah Sabayis, which is the Rashba, the Shulchan Aruch says, chatzitza is subjective. A dyer with dye in his hands may perform the tzitzit without cleaning them, because he's not particular about it. The Mishnah Berurah was machalek. If the majority of the hand is covered, it's still a chatzitza, even if the person is not makpid. But if one specifically desires it, like a dye for women, it's not a chatzitza, even when it covers the majority. We saw above that in addition to the considerations about whether people are particular to remove certain substances from their bodies, the Shulchan Aruch also distinguishes between dried ink, which is a chatzitza, and wet ink, which does not. To explain this, the Mishnah Berurah writes that wet ink dissolves in water and therefore has no substance, while dry ink remains on the skin and has substance to it.
Would this include a tattoo? Dried ink? Would that be a chatzitza? The Netilas Yadayim?
A tattoo is in the skin.
It's the same as dried ink, is it not? It's in the skin.
That ink is on the surface. So first of all, you're not allowed to do a tattoo.
Understood.
If someone has a tattoo, is it maybe we will cover it. But tattoo ink is actually in the skin. it may be considered that it's not on top of the skin. It's only something that, if there's something that separates between the water and the skin, if the tattoo's in the skin, maybe it's not a chatzitza regarding the tefillah.
They're not considered, tattoos not considered a chatzitza. So it's an Issa Deraisa, but it's not considered a chatzitza.
Because it's not on top of the skin, it's within the skin.
Am I mistaken? They're making a they're distinguishing between a dye and ink. Like if it's a dye and you're a dyer or a painter,
Yeah.
it's subjective, but ink, really?
No, so if you were a printer who deals with ink, you would have the same din as a dyer.
Oh, you would? Is that what?
For a professional, but for us, where we don't work with ink, if we had ink on our hands, we would get rid of it. So he wants to say, if it's wet, it would not be a chatzitza. If it's dry, it is a chatzitza. He explains, something wet and it's water soluble, once you get in the water is going to dissolve it. So it's not going to be an interposition between the water and his body. The water reaches his body. Paint, which is the same as ink, it's got to be something tangible on his hand. If there's nothing tangible there, there's just an appearance. It's not a chatzitza. Like shoe polish. Or I don't know, it's shoe polish. Blackening that has no substance. I don't know what they're referring to.
Spray tan.
Susie said spray tan. Why do you say it has no substance?
I don't know what spray tan is. Sprays on you.
It sounds like they're distinguishing between the thickness of the dye or the ink. Like paint is very thick, ink is very thin.
Versus something that has a color, but there's no mamoshus there. Now, it's,
Spray tan.
let's see further. The source of the Mishnah Berurah's comment that a colored appearance without something tangible is halachically insignificant. That can be found in the Rashba discussing chatzitza when you go to mikvah. The Rashba writes that dye used for beautification is not a chatzitza, as the dye is merely coloration. This means that something is classified as a chatzitza only if it's a substantial material which can be felt and not merely an absorbed stain. And the Piskei Tshuvos, who's contemporary, offers a few practical examples. Let's say you're peeling fruit and you get some color on your hand. V'chein yud refu'i, so like iodine. Hamanichim alamaka. Yadayim ufuchamos mepiach va'ashan. You were in a fire and your hands have soot and smoke on it. O me'ashachrirut shebedofnei akderos. The side of pots can become black, and if you touch it, it can rub up on you. Kvar kosvula el shekamo kein dio, the rishume 8, ink, or the mark of pens, shel zmanenu. All of this is begeder chazusa ba'alma. This is coloration only. She'ein b'mamish ve'ein b'chatzitza. It's not considered a chatzitza. Omnam shiurei mashkaot netukim ma'od. Let's say very sweet drinks that are colored. Anishpachim alayad v'nasim dveikim, and then it can become sticky. S'mokam hakesem. That means we have a stain. It's also sticky. Shalayara is a chatzitza because it's probably got material there. Even if it's a minority of the hand. If If it's something sticky, people are going to want to clean that up. Aval mishkaot she'einam metukim, but non-sweet drinks, she'einam dveikim kishenishpach, they don't stick to your hand when they spill, and they splash when he tells them alayad. Then ein ba mishum chatzitza, they're not a chatzitza. Va'av sheyesh kesem v'roshem mitzeva amashke, even though there looks like there's some Kool-Aid on your hand, it's only chazusa ba'alma. Rav Moshe Sternbach in the Chuvas Vanogas writes that in modern times, even professional craftsmen clean the paint from their hands before Shabbat and other times, and they are therefore required to wash their hands for cleanliness before performing the Tilas Yadayim. Nirish bezmanenu, besofer, somebody writing, say for Torah, or kosev, or a writer, eina dio kavua, and it's not a permanent, eina din kavua. It's not the same din as before. Most of these people, after they finish their job, they wash their hands. With Ajax and soap, to get rid of the dirt. There's no heter today to be matir not to do Netilas Yadayim. He certainly washes his hands on Shabbat. It's not that he doesn't care about it. It's too much effort to do it. Because later on, 10 minutes later, he's going to be back at work. So therefore, according to the Rav Moshe Sternbach, it would be considered chatzitza even for a dyer. A painter who b'Shabbos makpid lisrachetz nikoyos, that before Shabbos he would clean rak b'chol in a makpid, but he's not makpid during the weekday. Im choytzet solo uveshut gadol kol gadol mimaram chaviv miforash she'en lakel b'tzavai. You should not be lenient with a painter. Afilu b'chol kishmisrachetz mikol lichlus l'Shabbos. Even during the week, if he washes off all the dirt for Shabbos, should not be lenient during the week. Every house has a bathroom. With a shower. And people have soap. He would many times clean himself. It's not proper to be lenient for a painter. The Halacha Brewer writes that a painter today must clean his hands before performing the Tilas Yadayim. We have a lot of water. And scribes, they wash their hands when they finish working. Specialized cleaning. That's considered that they're makpid. According to the Ramah, as long as the person is not particular about a scab, he may have it on the hand, and it's not considered chatzitza. So a scab is not chaitzitz. The Magen Avraham, the way the Pri Megadim explains, that even if he's particular about the scab, it does not interpose if it would be painful to remove. If it's going to hurt him to take it off, it's not a chatzitza. According to Pri Megadim, and that's how the Mishnah Berurah rules. If he doesn't remove it from his hand because he wants to get it off, and it's clearly and not makpid, when they show mitzvah, it would hurt him to remove it. The reason behind this ruling is that a person generally prefers that the scab be removed, which would seemingly define it as a situation of being particular. Nonetheless, since he's not removing it now due to the pain it would cause, it's considered to be something about which he's not particular at this time. And therefore you don't have to remove a scab. What about bandages, band-aids, and casts? If one has a bandage or band-aid on one's hand, must one remove the bandage performing Tis Yadayim. There's a contradiction in the ruling of Shulchan Aruch on this. In one place, the Shulchan Aruch states that a bandage is considered a chatzitza, presumably because one is particular about it and wants it to be removed. He gives an example, a bandage. Later, the Shulchan Aruch rules that one need not remove a bandage. Rather, he may wash the rest of the hand. He has a wound and he has a bandage. He should wash the remaining hand, where the bandage is not. And the water shouldn't touch it because the bandage is like a kli. And once the water touches the kli, it touches the hand again, it'll make the hand tummy. Or he pours a quarter of log of water on the hand at once, and that water will not become richly impure. The Mishnah explains that when water touches the bandage, but does not touch the hand, it's considered impure and can render the rest of the hand impure again after it's been washed. To explain this latter ruling, the Achronim write that the area of the bandage is considered detached from the rest of the hand and is not treated as a place that one needs to wash. Therefore, by definition, the rule of chatzitza does not apply. But how do we resolve this contradiction between the two rulings of the Shulchan Aruch? The Mishnah Berurah suggests the following based on number of Achronim. If you have a bandage, al psaro, the after mavur lekaman, even though he said in Simin Kuf Samech Beis if Yud, the ein tzarich litol klal al makom ratia, that he doesn't have to wash where the bandage is. Umitam, why? The kivin sheni yochel litol bos makom. He can't wash the avi kamosha nikta etzbo. It's like his finger's been amputated. The ein tzarich litol rak shar makom hayod. He then only has to wash the remaining hand. Hasam alo mayri b'yesh lo maka, because he has a wound. L'kach lo chayshinan sheyasir makom ratia. We're not concerned he's going to take the bandage off. The yigab b'bsar lo oichlin dekoyevle, and the water there is not going to touch the skin under the bandage during the meal because it's going to hurt him. If he doesn't have a wound, but maybe there's a spot there that's hurting, and that's why he put this bandage on. And there wouldn't be pain if he washed there. And he can remove it. We're concerned he's going to remove the bandage in the middle of the meal. And the food will touch his unwashed hand. In such a case, you got to remove the bandage and wash your hand. According to Mishnah Berurah, when a person has a wound that prevents him from removing his bandage or band-aid, the bandage is not a chatzitza, and he does not need to pour water on that spot at all. But if removing the bandage doesn't hurt, then there's concern that one will remove the bandage in the middle of the meal, and it's defined as an item about which he is makpid, as fundamentally he does not want the bandage to be there, so he must remove it to wash. What is the halacha if you have a cast on one hand? Does the obligation with Yisadayim apply even when one can wash only one hand? And if so, would it be appropriate to recite the standard bracha on Yisadayim in plural, since he's only washing one hand? Or should he recite Al Natilas Yad? So Rav Ovadia Someach, in his Shuva Zivchei Tzedek, posits that one should recite the standard bracha based on the following ruling. They were eating, and somebody left to go to the bathroom. He sort of shook his male member to get the drops out after he urinated. He only used one hand. So Shulchan Aruch says he should wash that hand again. And yet, the Magen Avraham says you have to make the bracha al nitas yadayim, even though he only washed one hand. So based on this, he's going to try to bring a rye for a cast. It's clear for the Shulchan Aruch that when there's a requirement to wash even one hand, one recites the standard bracha al nitas yadayim. But Rav Ovadia Yosef argues the case of washing after relieving oneself is completely unlike washing when partially covered with a bandage. He says, "L'chor yesh lodin b'ri ayazu." He's going to attack the proof that the Ziv Chet Tzedek used. Shedavka sham shlo nischayv ma'olam litol el yarachas. There's only a chiyuv to wash one hand. When you urinated, he still falls under the general rule of Netilas Yadayim. A regular person has to wash both hands. He hasn't washed his hands yet. Elishu honest. He has an accident because he's got a cast on. If an accident happened, it's like somebody who didn't do anything. No, it's like he did it. The answer commando avad, having an oinus happen is as if you didn't do something. Because of Aran, he shouldn't recite the bracha of Netilas Yadayim because it's if he didn't do the decree. Rav Yosef Chaim, the author of the Ben Ish Chai, discusses this at length in the Rav Poalim. He writes that according to the Beis Yosef, Chazal did not establish Netilah for only one hand. However, he later accepts the position of the Tvua Shor that when performing a mitzvah that requires a bracha, one should recite even in a case where some element of uncertainty exists concerning the obligation to recite it. Miyu. Avagav the suffix zelon is bar etzle adayin eitei. He's not sure it's in doubt. Daiti noite sheyivarech. He thinks you should make the bracha. Even the suffix zeh, lori tiv b'shum sefer. He never saw the suffix in a book. I don't want to tell the person who asked me the question not to make the bracha. Avagav the kaimel on suffix brachas la'akel. Even though there's a general rule, suffix brachas la'akel mishum kibu bracha kvua ala mitzvah, a bracha that's established before doing a mitzvah, matzinu the kapti rabbanon lamevid mitzvah below bracha. We see sometimes do the mitzvah, shake the lulav, don't make the bracha. Va'ayin la'gas tvua shor, mutav lach misatzon b'safik, goram bracha shenet tzricha, milikanis b'safik sheyimna mevarach l'asiyas mitzvah. Better to make a bracha which is not required than to have a suffix about not citing a bracha at all when you do a mitzvah. So in his case, Rav Ovadia also concludes that you should recite the bracha. Rav Yosef Chaim istamech od al divrei HaTvua Shor. Gam b'tshuvos acheres v'kiyotzu b'kos of agon on etziv v'emek sheila she'osr lasos a mitzvah b'lo bracha. It's prohibited to do a mitzvah without a bracha. V'chein kos of ha'pri chodosh. Ach agon Rav Shlomo Kluger kos of al divrei HaTvua Shor v'lo nehira. He didn't understand that. Aval min yidon didad nira she'ichel halacha k'mo she'posek haZiv Chet Tzedek, that you should recite the bracha of Netilas Yadayim even when you only wash one hand. Uk'maskones Rav Poalim sheish l'bracha on Netilas Yadayim. V'cheis kos of Rav Agon Rav Yaakov Soifer b'Kaf HaChaim b'sikum anoitel yodo achas k'shiyodo shniya nituna b'geves. One hand is in a cast, and you can only wash one hand. Mevorach al Netilas Yadayim. Rav Ovadia questions this conclusion based upon the ruling of the Torah Shulchan Aruch that one who performs tefillas kelim, when you purchase a kli from a Gentile and you have to be toivelit, recites the bracha of al tefillas kli, not kelim. If there are two or more utensils, then tefillas kelim. So why in our case, when you wash one hand, maybe you should say on the tilas yad. Rav Ovadia resolved the question by arguing these brachas are distinct. Concerning tefillas kelim, Chazal institute that the formulation of the bracha should be al tefillas kli, because it's very common that you only bought one kli. But here, since the primary answer is to wash both hands, and being unable to wash one hand is not a common occurrence, no distinction was made in the language of the bracha. And Rav Yitzchak Yosef, Rav Ovadiah's son, agrees with his father's ruling. But he adds that if one recited the bracha of Netilas Yad, he's also fulfilled his obligation. One hand has wounds on it. It's all in a cast or a bandage. He eats with his other hand. He has to wash the other hand. He has a cast. Use the regular nusach. If he made netilas yad, he shouldn't go back and recite the bracha again. What about rings?
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
Like if someone breaks their hand, God forbid, and sometimes they have their fingers available, that stick out of the cast. Would you say they have to wash their fingers at least up to the knuckles?
Is he
to the
gonna
extent
touch-
they can?
Is he going to touch the food with those fingers? Then yes.
He might. Yeah.
Then yes. We said then yes. If he's only going to eat with one hand, then he'll have to wash one. But if he's got a few fingers size sticking out, it's probably it's probably not going to be a toilet. But l'chor, if he's going to touch the food, you would think that he'd have to wash it. So we saw that women are subject to the obligation of Netilas Yadayim, just like men. So the rules of Chatzitza should apply to women as they apply to men. Nevertheless, there may be at least one case in which the rules of Chatzitza are stricter for women than they are for men. Namely, removing rings worn on one's fingers before washing. Ring is clearly worn on a minority of the area. And one generally wants to remain there. So why is it a problem? Nonetheless, there are times when most women are careful to remove the ring so it doesn't get dirty. For this reason, the Rosh and Ravid rule, cited by the Beis Yosef, in terms of going into a mikveh, that a ring is considered to be a minority about which one is particular, and therefore it's a chatzitza. So because of Od, Vagois Ashri, the tzarech laser at the bas me'al yoda b'shas Netilas Yadayim. You have to remove a ring before Netilas Yadayim. Because of Arosh, v'im tomar tabas mehudekas amay chaytza. If the ring is very tight, so water is not going to get. Tabas mehudekas amay chaytza. Why is it? It's a minority of your hand, and you also want to leave it there. For Atirat Shama Rosh, Shema Ravid, the Makpedesi Lasir B'Shas Lisha. When women knead dough, they remove their rings because they don't want the rings to get dirty. It's like the case of the person washing his hands before Shabbos. Since there are times where he's makpid, it's considered a chatzitza. The kiven she makpedes b'shum pam. So since there are times where she's makpid to remove the ring, even though maybe going into the mikveh she doesn't care that she has the ring on, it's considered halachically a chatzitza. V'nira dafilu tabas refuya, even if it's not a very tight ring, it's loose. Tzarech la'asir, you should remove it. They're not really sure about the shear of how loose it can be. Maybe a gzeira because she'll come to do it even when it's tight. According to these Rishonim, a woman is obligated to remove tight rings, as she tends to remove them when kneading, and it's therefore a case of a chatzitza covering a minority of the area about which one is particular. Moreover, one must remove even a loose ring so that one will not come to perform Netilas Yadayim without removing a tight ring. And the Shulchan Aruch codifies this. Very simple. You got to remove the ring. Even if it's loose. Even she doesn't mind washing her hand with the ring on. But there are other times where she'll remove the ring like cooking and kneading and things like that. So they wouldn't get dirty. So therefore, you have to remove it before Netilas Yadayim or going in the mikvah. The Naguk Tzas Lakel Ruffle. Some people are lenient if it's a very loose ring. Aval Yesh Lahachmir, Ki Ein Anu Bekim Ezu Mikriv. The Ramos says we should be makpid. We should be machmir in this case. The Mishnah writes that the rules given above apply specifically to women, since they are more careful to remove their rings at certain time, like when needing. But men who have rings do usually not remove them, and they don't have to remove them before performing the Netilas Yadayim. Umaske achron davke isha, shedarka lakpid laser bas b'shas malacha, hainu b'shas lisha when they need. Well, now, very interesting. I inherited a wedding ring from my father, alav shalom, and I used to wear my wedding ring. As a surgeon, we were required to remove our ring, to wash our hands. In fact, that's how I lost the ring, because when we wear scrubs, you used to put it has these two strings to tie the waist. So I used to put the ring and then tie it. That way you'd always have the ring there. I was a harbor general and I lost my ring. But for a surgeon who is required to remove his ring, he would be like a woman, because he has to remove his ring. It's not for the same svara. There they're removing the ring because it gets dirty. Here we're removing the ring because they want you to wash your hand and there shouldn't be dirt underneath the ring. I would say if somebody had sent a tshuva that they would agree.
Ernie, we can always organize you another ring. Don't worry. It's a good story, but it doesn't help. Susie told me.
It's funny, I also lost my.
No, Susie has her ring. This was my ring.
I understand. You're going around there with all the people there without a ring. It's okay.
You mean the nurses?
I don't mean anything. Well,
That was a
maybe
long
in your
time
bit.
No, by the way, Bernie Monder will remember. The nurses were like concentration camp guards. No, not the Holocaust. They checked when you came into the OR. They would check you. It was it's much more lax today, but there was a time because you come in with your hands like this, and then you have to towel them, and they glove you. They put gloves on you. You don't put your own gloves on. So if they saw that you had something on your hand, they would make you go out and take it out.
And rewash.
And rewash, of course. Okay. So he says a man in general doesn't have to remove it. Afilu in a roughly, rakim yeshpo even tov. He says if there's a diamond in it or another precious stone, maybe a man would remove it as well when he washed his hands so it shouldn't get dirty with water. So a man would have to remove it as well. Nowadays, many women are not particular about dirtying a ring, even while engaging in activities such as kneading dough. So there are poskim such as Rabbi Sion Abishol rule that a ring is not an interposition, and there's no need to remove it at the time of Netilah. Says today women don't have to remove their ring. Even if it's tight. Even they're not makpid lotzias at the bas b'shas lisha. It's not something that they're makpid on. Whether there's a stone or not is to be called malkum. Isha makpid lotzias at the bas b'shas lisha. If a woman does remove it before she needs, so tzricha lahasis the bas b'shas l'tisadayim. So this, despite this kula of Rav Ben Sion Abishol, many women customarily remove their rings before performing Tisadayim. But what should they do when they are afraid to remove their rings because they may forget to put them back on or they may get stolen? The Piskei Teshuvah recommends that a woman wash her hand once, move the ring slightly, unwash her hand again, and then move it back. Yesh hakoitzvin shebizmanenu in derech hanoshim lo yodat habas aflo b'shas lisha. People, women don't take off their rings. Lachen im yodas patma shehi achein eina morida tabas b'shas lisha. If she knows she doesn't take off her ring when she needs, eina chayeves lo yorida tabas. She doesn't have to remove it. But v'isha makpedes lo yorida tabas selif netil tisedai. Let's say a woman she's makpid to remove it before netila. But she's in a place where she's concerned shamatishka chatabaos or yignevu. She might forget it or it's stolen. She should dump a revius on their hand. She should move the ring to a different location and then dump more water. A woman who follows this advice should be sure to pour at least a quarter of a log of water at once, as if not, her hands will be rendered ritually impure again from the water on the ring, similar to the case of the bandage. Does nail polish constitute a chatzitza that women must remove before Netilas Yadayim? The Or L'Tzion writes that a woman need not remove nail polish from her hands before Netilas Yadayim, since she desires its presence. However, if it's already somewhat chipped, then it would constitute a chatzitza, since she does not want it to remain on her nails in that form. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Just a random question. If a woman does take their ring off and washes Netilas Yadayim, is it a hefsek to put the ring back on before you make the bracha?
Why? You're not, there's no, hefsek is a dibur. You want to say you want to think the act of putting it on is a hefsek?
I'm asking.
I think a hefsek would be a dibur that's not related. For example, you're allowed to say, bring the salt, and that's not considered a hefsek. If it's letzorech, the lechem, it's not a hefsek. But if you talk about the Laker game, then it's a hefsek. I wouldn't think that if you were silent and just put the ring on, that it would be considered a hefsek. You need to give me a score as to why.
Just